another big thing of mine is pair programming. I'm a huge advocate of that. So,
Same.
Colin, what kind of experiences have you had with pair programming?
Sure. My first job was pretty limited on the pair programming. We were a very small team. We started out when I joined, there was three of us, and I think 3 or 4 months into me joining, we went down to two, and it was two juniors, myself and like my buddy Steve. Trying to keep the ship afloat. And we would always try to pair, as much as we could. But we were both, extremely busy. So like we we did the best we could. My current job though, with Chris, I mean, we pair on things all the time, and it's great. I wish I would have done more pairing at my last job, but this makes up for it now because I get to pair with Chris all the time.
Yeah.
So
Well, and what do you see as kind of the benefits of pair programming? Because, honestly, a lot of businesses are going to look at that and say, well, I'm using two people's man hours to do one person's
Sure.
worth of work. So
Sure.
what's your argument to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely caught typos for Chris, and he saved me from some as well, or just you know thinking we're on the right track in a flow, and then realizing, oh, actually, wait a second, this thing that we just thought about totally derails the path that we were on. Like, we need to circle back now. So like when we get to that point a lot faster than if I was doing it by myself, I'd probably be more inclined to run a lot further with that string, than it getting caught sooner. Also, naming things is a real nice plus too.
Yeah.
It's amazing the conversations that can grow from trying to come up with a good name for something, and just also, I learned a lot from Chris about kind of just designing your interface more, well, if we design like the method signature for this way, though, it kind of limits what the end user can do with it down the line. If we open it up and say, like, for example, let's, instead of a method taking, these two arguments, let's open it up so that it can take an array, or it can take a block, for example, right? And we can execute down the way. It'll be a lot more versatile use for the end user, and allow for a better experience on their end of things. So those are some of the big things that I've taken away from, having pair time with Chris, or just anybody in general.
Cool. So, and Andrew, I want to get your thoughts too, but while I'm getting your thoughts, chat, what is your answer to the businesses that say, hey, pair programming is just twice as much cost for me to get the same amount of work? What's your answer to that? So Andrew, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I have many thoughts, but first I'll say, Collin, do you remember how we met?
Yeah, pairing.
Pairing.
Yeah.
I offered to pair with anyone on Ruby for Good projects, and he was the only one that said yes. And so that's how we met.
That's how this whole thing started, and we've been hanging together ever since.
Cool.
Yep. I would say to that, of the question of like a company really questioning it, it's like you're looking at you're evaluating it with the wrong lens, because you're only seeing two people working on one thing. And in your mind, two people could be doing two things, which is double the productivity. And now I've cut it in half by pairing. That's not true, because when number one, like in addition to everything that Collin said, pairing, number one, will keep me as a really ADHD person actually in my seat. So like automatically you've got way more productivity out of me when I'm pairing with someone. The second is like, there is obviously code review should still happen, but there is a degree of code review happening at the same time with that collaboration. The other thing I commonly get stuck on is like, okay, well, I have these options, right? And it's like, which option should I choose? Like, there's drawbacks to each of them, pros and cons. And so I get stuck in that thought for a while. And I need to talk it out. And so if you already have someone there to talk it out with, you reduce that feedback loop of just getting it out right there, talking amongst yourselves. Even if it's just rubber ducking, as the show implies. But the other thing is like the quality of code is usually higher. I think the last thing I'll say is that now you have 2 engineers that know this code. And now that means there's 2 people who can fix it later instead of 1 person who may not be there. So I think it helps with the overall quality, the maintainability, and the quality of code that I write in a pairing session is much higher.
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of good points there. An important one is you protect yourself from somebody being out with the flu for a week.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm glad you said it, 'cause I was gonna say the same thing. Like if the 2 people who paired on it, if one's out and the other one has to come back, you save a lot of time and them having to trace through, and figure out what the hell is even going on, right? They were there for it. So there's that knowledge share there.
Yeah. And to give an extreme example of that, my coworker Seb just moved to Japan. I live in Arizona in the United States. So that means basically around the clock, there are 2 experts on our checkout code at all times online. So, I mean, when you think about that, because we paired almost the entire time we built this together. So now you have that too. Like that's not something like that someone would just evaluating 2 people to working on one thing would think of like, oh, now we have 2 experts that are always online at one time or another. And so that means that if there is a bug with our checkout process that affects our income, there will be someone to fix it almost always.
Yep. So a couple things from. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I'm saying fix it quickly.
Oh, yeah.
That's the key factor, right? Fix it quickly.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of benefits from the pair programming that aren't immediately available or apparent. And when you're looking at it from a business standpoint, one of the reasons I brought this question up is because I see a lot of programmers who get confronted with that and say, "Oh gosh, I don't know. I guess you're right." And I hope that we can get to a point where the programmers are adept enough to say, "Well, yeah, but you're missing all these points here." So let's take a look at chat and see what they were saying about it. So Brittany says it's hard to do it 100% of the time, but it's great for teaching, debugging, and rubber ducking. Yes, I agree with all those points, and I'd go a little further to say that I don't think it's actually good to do it 100% of the time. I think you need some alone cogitating time between pair sessions. Should you be allowed to review a PR that you paired with someone with? That's a good question. Collin, what do you think?
I was gonna say I'm gonna say no. That's the first thing that's my gut feeling is no.
Andrew?
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay. Creston?
So it's a bit like saying, I wrote this and I endorse this message.
See, yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, you can, but you need to have somebody other than the 2 that actually wrote it, I think, to approve it. If you have that many developers, that's my opinion.
The thing I've found for me is it's useful when I put a PR up, let it sit overnight, and then go back and do a review on it myself. That's helpful for me, but I always have somebody who hasn't looked at it do a review, a PR review.
Yeah, because even that whole thing, like you could be going down one, like if you're a solo developer, you'd be going down one path and decide, is this the right way? I don't know. I think that same dynamic could happen with 2 people doing something together. They have made decisions that have gone to some other route. But if you have 2 or 3 other developers that are reviewing that code, they may have different perspectives of like, oh, did you consider, So I think there's still benefit to having other people, definitely more people than just the 2 pairs to have it reviewed and approved or whatever.
Yeah.
I definitely think there should be more, like it's definitely way more ideal, right, to have someone not. But I think if you're not the driver, I think it's totally fine to review it, especially like what Chris just said. You go to sleep, you wake up the next morning. Maybe I've rethought about this. And also because you have more familiarity with the code, you might be able to think a little bit more clearly on the workflows and any edge cases. So I think obviously having someone else review it is more helpful, but I don't think there's any problem with reviewing it if you paired on it. I mean, I do it.
Yeah. I don't think it should be disallowed. I don't think that you should be the only person doing it though.
Right.
For sure. So Drew says, for me, pairing improves knowledge sharing, especially senior junior. I've also found it improves code quality via reduced assumed knowledge. Yes, I love doing junior senior pairs. That's my favorite type of pair programming. Not only because as a senior programmer, I get to mentor a junior programmer, which I really enjoy doing. I like to teach and mentor. But I have found through doing that I actually learn a whole lot of stuff from the junior programmer because they don't come with all the baggage of assumptions that I've developed over 27 years of programming. So they help me see things with fresh eyes, and I end up learning a lot there. So it's kind of good to rejuvenate senior programmers in that pairing as well. And the knowledge sharing is just, it's phenomenally important, especially for cases like you said, somebody's out with the flu. Well, okay, now I have to go learn their code, and by the time I've learned it, they're back. Well, no, I was there when it was written, so I know what it is. That's huge, and that's a big deal for business because efficiency is an enormous thing, especially when you're working in an agile environment. If you're not efficient, you can't do agile. Like Collin said, naming things. Yes, naming things sucks. I hate that so much, but having two people doing it is way better. Hey, Julie, welcome to the show. I paired with someone on a ticket and drove it, but I did not review it because I'm the junior. The other person was a senior. Yeah, and I mean, it's fine to not review it. Like I said, I do it just because after, yesterday me didn't catch something that today me can after a good night's sleep. But I'm never the one that actually does the final approval of my own code. Do not cite the deep magic to me, right? I was there when it was written. Yes. Yay! You win chat tonight. So right, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you reviewed it, but yeah, you're right. The formal review approval process was. I get it. Yep. But yeah, I think that's still. I even like to do that once I've put it up in a PR and look at it in GitHub rather than looking at it in my development environment, because I find that it context switches my brain and I end up catching more things there because it's just a different view of it. So
100%.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.